Welcome to Russell Jones Speaks, where we explore big issues that matter to parents, grandparents, and kids. We tackle intergenerational issues. Everything that affects parents, grands, and children is on the table. That includes health and fitness, relationships, attitude, family unity, vision, adversity, God, and anything else that might arise. The goal is for you to take away something that you can use in your life immediately. For over 30 years, Jon Pritikin has traveled the world motivating and inspiring people of all ages by using feats of strength as a platform to share his never give up story. In England, Jon broke and set 2 world records for rolling up frying pans with his bare hands, earning a spot in the Guinness World Records book. Having overcome a multitude of obstacles and challenges and proving wrong all those who spoke the words, "You can't," Jon has a gift for speaking to issues of self-worth and to the value of each individual. Whether speaking in school assemblies with professional athletes or in the corporate world, Jon uses humor, inspirational narrative, and passion to equip people with the keys to make positive decisions and to help them recognize their true potential. Over 10 million people in 60 countries have heard his motivational message. Welcome, Jon.
It's good to be here today. Thank you for letting me be on your show.
Hey, I'm stoked. And I just wanted to the way we got connected. So I went to my mentor in the strongman world is Dennis Rogers. Right, I started out with a couple other guys back in the early
He's right.
90s.
He's right over your shoulder.
He is,
Yeah.
and so those guys the guys I first got introduced to breaking things and whatever. They weren't really into the physical culture of strongmanism and everything. And so, but back in the early 90s, it was like, it's not as easy as today to go look at a YouTube video or whatever, see things. So I don't even know where to go. I called Paul Anderson, 1956,
Wow.
gold medal winner, just before he died. I didn't even know he was sick.
Wow.
And I'm trying to get advice from him. And he's going, well, when I go in, he says, I take this 300-pound dumbbell and I bend over and I do 10 presses with it. I'm like, okay, I'm talking to the wrong guy. And he's driving nails through boards, but the boards were like 2x4s. And it was like, all right. So he was a great guy, though. God, he's just great guy. So anyway, I end up at the Association of Old Time Barbell and Strongmen event in New York City, at the home of the Heisman Trophy, the Downtown Athletic Club. And so, and I meet this little guy. I'm thinking strongman. Whenever I think strongman, I'm thinking like big gorillas, like you. And he's like, no, that's a compliment. In our world, it's a compliment. If you call me a gorilla, that's awesome. But and I meet Dennis, and he's like the littlest guy there, and I get to hear his story, and we connected. I was his first student, so I'm not his best, but his first, and so he just had this knack. So as a grandmaster, he not only did he physically do things like Jon, 100-pound. He had a dumbbell I would hand to him. We went to some places to do some demonstrations. His arm is braced on an inclined bench. He can't swing his arm. I put a 100-pound dumbbell in his hand, and he did 10 curls. But either arm, he did 10 curls.
Yeah.
And that was at about 150-pound body weight.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I went home and tried. I couldn't even hold it up. I couldn't even hold it in that position. And so Dennis was just incredible. But his gift was being creative, doing all these coming up with all these crazy feats and challenges. And he was really he's called the Grandmaster Strongman for a reason, because just about everybody in the strongman world today somehow has been connected through Dennis Rogers. And anyway, so we were down visiting him at his ranch down in Texas maybe 2 years ago now. And Dennis always has stuff for him. He's got his gym, but then he's a collector. He's got all kinds of and crazy historical stuff and everything. Objects that were bent and twisted by whoever.
Mighty Adam and all those different.
Slim the Hammerman, all his stuff, And so anyway, so he always gives me stuff. So he gives me stuff, and it was like some kind of upholstery type stuff. And he gives me a book. And so I'm traveling though with like two big dogs, my wife. We got a bubble on top of our SUV. I want to put it in a safe place. So I put it somewhere under a seat so it could be flat. And we went home back to South Carolina. It had to be 2 months later. And I said, I was looking for something. And I said, oh, I forgot. I put this stuff under the seat. And I pull it out. And it's Jon Pritikin's Feel the Power book.
Mm.
And so I read that book and I just got stoked. And I called Dennis. He
Uh,
goes, dude, he said, I've seen him do his presentation twice. And he said, I cried both times. I knew exactly what was coming and I still cried. And I was
uh,
like, okay, I want to tap into what this guy's emotions are about, what he's
uh.
learned over the years. So, anyway, enough of that. So, anyway, so you're a California kid. All right. So John, where did you grow up?
So I was actually born in outside Chicago, a little town. Oh, this is the second biggest city in Illinois called Rockford, Illinois. And
Okay.
then at 18 months old, we moved to the San Francisco Bay Area. Yeah, I just couldn't handle it. I needed to get away from the traffic. No, I'm just
Uh,
joking. Yeah, I was a year. I was a kid. No, my parents moved out there, and we lived in a town called Lafayette, California, and that's where I grew up. We're next to a city or a school called University of California, Berkeley, UC Berkeley, which is a pretty prestigious school on the
right,
West
right.
Coast. And
Sure.
so I grew up there. My mom worked for a bank. At the time, it was called the Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation. Now it's called HSBC. And she was an executive with them. But back then in the 70s, you were only allowed to have two international branches in the United States. So there's one in San Francisco, one in New York.
New
They're
York.
only allowed one. They changed the rule. That's what it was. And so they had to close her branch. And so she moved to another branch and she became a vice president of Central Bank, which is a bank in California. That's
Okay.
now Wells Fargo. So
Oh,
yeah,
really?
yeah.
Oh,
Well,
that's
Wells
big.
Fargo's absorbed them. Yeah.
Sure.
So, and then my
Yeah.
dad was in sales, and so I grew up there in the East Bay of San Francisco.
Okay. Now you said you had a half sibling?
So I have a half sister. So my parents were divorced when I was in first grade.
Okay.
And then when I was 15 years old, my mom had a little girl. And so I have a
Okay.
half sister.
Oh,
And
cool.
so, but I was almost 16, 15, 16, when she was born. So there's a big age difference between us.
Yeah.
And then I have some stepbrothers. I have three stepbrothers. Uh,
Okay.
so yeah.
But they're all younger than you.
Actually, they are all younger than me, but two of them were all born this. We were born in the same year. So one's only a couple of months older, younger, than the other one's like 6 months younger.
Oh, wow.
And then
Okay.
I have another one that's about 10 years younger. So yeah, but not super close to all of them. I mean, we talk and stuff like that, but yeah,
Right, right.
yeah.
So, okay. So, neighborhood, was it a neighborhood or you grew up in like an apartment
So
complex or
no,
something?
yeah. So we Lafayette is a very, 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 very wealthy area, and so
Okay.
still like back in the 70s, the houses were going for almost $1 million. I mean, so like I remember the lady
Okay.
who helped take care of me. Her boyfriend was a singer named Eddie Money. He lived there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot
Two
of famous.
tickets.
Yeah, to paradise. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I think he
That's
was talking
cool.
about North Carolina when he said that.
I don't
Yeah,
know. It
yeah.
could have been, but no, not North Carolina, South Carolina
Oh,
for
you're in
sure.
South Carolina. See,
Yeah,
there we
yes, sir.
go.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a big difference.
There
I'll
is
tell
a
you.
big difference. I've been to both. You're right. There is
Yes,
a
sir.
big difference.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah.
But
But yeah, so that area was kind of like that. And then when I was in first grade, no kindergarten, we moved to a town called San Ramon. And back then it was like everyone's like, why are you going so far away? It was only about 20 minutes from the school I grew up at, but it was a chance for my parents to buy a house there that was more affordable. Now
right.
today, San Ramon, you can't buy a house in San Ramon in California today in 2024 for less than like probably 1.5. I mean,
Oh,
it's
wow.
considered the Bay Area now. Back then, it was not considered the Bay Area. And
Well,
so the Bay Area is anything that's
so
surrounding San Francisco.
yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. So okay. So we might as well jump into this whole thing because this is, you know, it's always been an issue. I've been doing school assemblies for years and years, not as many as you, but I've done like probably 1,000 or so,
That's a lot.
when we
Yeah.
estimate it. But yeah, but spread out over a bazillion years. But bullying is always a thing, right? It's
Hmm.
always, self-esteem, motivation, anti-bullying. It's always a thing to talk about because it's something in life that just I mean, it's just part of humans. I mean, it's, they're just cruel. There's a side of humanity that's not pretty. So you go to school, and all of a sudden, I guess it's all of a sudden you're picked on and everything. And I didn't realize until I was reading. So you had two issues, right? That were kind of set you apart from the other kids. Because I mean, pictures of you as a kid. I mean, it wasn't like we used to talk about people being a jug-eared Martian or whatever all these things. Kids would always have a thing for other kids.
Right,
Pointing
right.
out differences and everything else. But you had two things, right, that were going on.
Yeah, I would say I probably had a couple. One, I was nonverbal for a lot of years, so not able to speak. And then I had a speech. I would stutter when I talked and stuff. And then not able to enunciate very well too. And then had this severe dyslexia. Still have that. And then in 1979, again, yeah, 1979, I was one of the first children ever in America. I'm in a textbook diagnosed with ADD, ADHD.
Oh, wow.
So they took a group of us and they did a study. UC Berkeley, they did a study on us. They came over to our school and they studied us. And they see back then they would put anybody who had any kind of was this different. They put us all in the same classroom. Now I was always the tallest kid in my class. I'm 6'4.5" now, but I was always the tallest kid in my class back then.
Hmm.
And so and then I was nonverbal or had problems with enunciating. And so with all that going on, they would put us in the same room. So we had people with Down syndrome or people who had cerebral palsy. There was a girl named Sonia. She was the same age as me in my class, and she was in the classroom with me, but she was a little person. She didn't have a learning issue at all. She was just a little person.
Well,
And so they put anybody who was different back then. And then during that time period, they were one of the first schools in America to integrate kids with special needs into the normal classroom. So they started bringing us back in and back out, back in, back out, which was good and bad because it made you a target. So it started in first grade. So I'm sitting in the class. A teacher walks in front of everybody, picks me up, and puts me into this other room with other kids. I started in the normal classroom, or I won't say normal, typical. Let's say typical,
typical.
because we're
Yeah.
all normal. That's why how I look at it.
But at
Um,
that age, is
yeah,
anybody normal? That's
yeah,
the
yeah.
question.
That's a
So
great point. Yeah.
I don't know,
So,
but
but what happened because it happened in front of everybody? I think it made me a target, and so that's when
yeah,
the students at the school started being mean to me. And when I would eat my lunch, they would throw garbage at me. And at the same time, my parents were going through a divorce. That started then too. So it was
yeah.
all that was happening through that first grade year.
So okay, so then a couple of the stories, the chase.
Mm.
Again, what was that, like
In
third
third grade,
grade?
yeah, yeah, third grade,
Yeah.
yeah. So every morning, because my parents worked a lot, I went to a daycare, but sometimes they would said to take me to daycare early. They would drop me off at school, and that my parents used to joke that I went to college before I went to elementary school because the daycare I went to was called Humpty Dumpty College. So, and so,
Great.
um, yeah. So, anyways, so that day, those several days, I didn't like to go in there and have to walk down the street to the school. So they would drop me off, and I would sit outside the school, and they would play this game where they run back and forth from there was like a tree to a playground equipment, and because growing up in San Francisco, we called Alcatraz. So you had to run across without anyone capturing you. And
Yeah, yeah.
so, yeah, so the one day they just walked over and they said, "Hey, why don't you help us? Why don't you play?" Oh man, I was so excited. I'm playing this game. And Russell, I gotta be honest with you, I had this mapped out in my mind where I was gonna go, how I was gonna run, what I was gonna do. Because I've watched this game for over a year now. And I
And you
was
have that thing, right, where you have didn't you at one point, I think we were talking, you had this like natural focus, like where you play things in your head probably more than the rest of
yeah,
us
yeah,
do.
like because I make a
So it's like,
living telling my story. I can
yeah,
watch the same movie over and over and over,
yeah, yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
fine. It drives everybody else crazy. But then also, I can go back to a hotel I've stayed at in India 17 years ago and tell you where everything in the hotel was.
yeah.
Like
That's
I
cool.
have a crazy memory and stuff like that.
So that was probably playing into this
Oh
whole,
yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
had
seeing the
mapped
game going,
everything out and stuff like
yeah,
that. And
yeah.
so yeah, yeah, yeah. So um,
Okay.
so that day I was so excited I played it, and then all of a sudden halfway through the game it was a setup. They were actually trying to hurt me. They chased me down the hall, and another boy had ran ahead and tripped me. I didn't know he had stuck his leg out and then split my chin open, and it was a mess. I had to go to the hospital and all that. So, but this is the part I don't always share in the assembly part, is that I went back to school.
Yeah.
And I was so excited to go back to school because I thought, because I got hurt, everyone would show compassion.
Right.
Not knowing that when I was in the hospital getting all these stitches in my chin, that they had a all school assembly. They brought everybody in because of my accident and banned that game on the school campus. They were not ever allowed to play that game. That was the last day that game was ever played because I got hurt. So I
Uh,
went from being like a victim to where I was the one who caused everyone not to play that game anymore. So things got a lot worse after that.
got worse. Oh yeah. Yeah, and some of those schoolyard games. Yeah, we played one called Johnny Rides a Pony, and on recess. This is Catholic school. All right, so you got white shirt, whatever, slacks and your tie and whatever, and they let us out in the schoolyard for, I don't know, 20 minutes. We didn't have gym class. There was never any gym class. It was like 20 minutes recess, and the guys, I didn't remember how you picked the team, but you'd have to bet like the corner of the schoolyard. There'd be one guy that would be the brace, and everybody would like lean into him and make this like line, and
Uh,
then the other team would run and jump on top of, and you'd see how many people could be on the line before the guys collapsed
oh
underneath,
wow,
and so there'd be like scrapes, and I mean, people, you come in from recess and you're a
wow,
total disaster,
yeah, yeah.
but people started getting hurt, and so yeah, it was banned, but I don't think it was like nobody, like in your case, that was extraordinary to associate you with the band, right? I mean, that had to be, yeah,
Well, yeah, that's all they thought of. I mean, the word got
yeah,
out that it was my fault. I tripped and fell. They weren't saying I was tripped.
right.
Yeah, yeah,
Man. So
yeah.
okay, so somehow you get through that, and then the fourth grade doesn't get better, right? It was you
No,
had that
so
teacher.
that was the year. Okay, they're like, no more putting this special class. We're going to keep you in the class all day long with this teacher. And so, I think the one thing I got used to is like changing environments. And someone who had battles with attention problems,
uh,
that made life easier. Actually, changing. So I mean, I live on the road. I think that's kind of that makes my life. It makes me focus a little bit more when things are a little bit more chaotic at times.
right.
And so, anyways, I say all that to say that I got assigned this teacher who did not care for me, and it was, yeah, it came prevalent, and it all came down to one day where she dismissed the whole class and held me after. I'm sitting at my desk. I'll never forget. I'm looking up at her, and she said, "You're never going to be able to read, write, or talk. You'll never graduate from high school or any college or university." She goes, "You are just a throwaway." And she went into other stuff too. And I'm just this like, 10-year-old kid sitting in this room, or actually
Uh,
9, I believe. And just like, just it rocked me. Yeah. I remember walking, but I didn't tell my parents, didn't tell anybody that happened.
no, but it was in there, right?
Yeah.
It was in,
Yeah.
and from a place that you're kind of conditioned as a kid, right, to trust, right?
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
trust adults, trust teachers, people in authority, and to have that come out, that had to be, oh gosh,
But the amazing thing out of that, I've shared that all over the world, to all the countries and all the people online, all that stuff. And I also talk about when I was speaking at a school. They say secondary school in the UK, not high school, but it was a high school kind of type in Scotland. And this boy comes up on stage and stops me in the middle of my program. Says, "This morning my parents sat me down and said we're getting a divorce." He goes, "They pointed at me and said it's your fault." And he just collapsed. And before he hit the stage, I caught him. He starts crying in front of this big school outside of Glasgow.
oh
He
man,
goes, "John, I don't know what I did." And he's just crying and yelling this out loud. And I tell that in my program to this day when I come to that part when I was in fourth grade. And I said, "I came to your school today. If that's anyone that's here to say, I'm sorry." And I have watched cultures, and I even see grown men and athletes and millionaires and politicians and presidents and even royalty people, kings and queens cry when I tell that part.
Yeah.
So one of the most dramatic things that happened in my life is one of the things to this day is open the door and help me to help other people all over the world.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I know that's, I mean, we had a tragedy, and it's to use experiences like that. And I think bullying is really universal. I think we really, at some level, I think we experience it, because even if you're the bully in your class, or in whatever grade it is, there's classes above you, and there's always somebody bigger that you have to kind of succumb to, or I guess you know you can't assert your bulliness in front of
Mhm.
that person, right? But the degree that you got it was totally extraordinary, in that you were able to turn that around. So yeah, give
I
me.
can I say one thing about bullying though?
Yeah.
And that's this is that I was on a TV, I was on NBC, and they asked me this. They said, John, what's the difference between bullying and teasing? See, in my assembly, I don't use the word bullying. I don't say the word bullying at all. Because if you're in New Jersey, you're doing a school assembly, and a student goes to a teacher, says, I'm being bullied, they have to fill out a HIPAA report just
uh,
because that one word bullying. There's a guy in my gym. He's a bodybuilder. He's huge. His name is Bobby. Just great guy. Great. We were really good friends. And he walked in one day in this really, really tight shirt on. And I go, hey, Bob. I go, Bobby, Baby Gap just called. They want their shirt back. And everyone's like, he's laughing and stuff like that. Was I bullying him? No, I was teasing. We were joking
right,
back and
right,
forth because it didn't come from a place of trying to hurt him. We're just laughing. Like he was making
right.
fun about my highlights, and we would go back and forth.
I
And
was
it
going to
was,
mention them.
yeah, yeah. Well, I do this because I'm insecure. And so I'm so insecure. I was watching the football game. They had a huddle. I thought they were talking about me.
Uh,
That's the whole line. That's the whole story. But anyways, so with Bobby though, that's the difference. And I think a lot of times students will saying I'm being bullied, and not necessarily being bullied. They're just might
right,
being teased a little bit. So I think as parents and as educators and as adults, we're trying to siphon through that. What's a bullying situation and what's a teasing situation? Because you
right,
don't
right,
want your student or your child to always say I'm being bullied when they're it's just joking around a little bit. So there's a thing we got to figure out too,
right,
because people still tease me to this day, and I know they love me. But does it hurt my feelings sometimes? Yeah, but then I'll say something, you know. But that's the
right.
difference between teasing and bullying. So I just want to say
Yeah,
that real
that's
quick.
good. No, that's good. That's important. I'm glad you brought that out, because the going through the school process, terminology, like you said, filling out forms, when if it's a teasing thing, then it should be easy to deal with, right? I mean, there's enough messaging that we could take. Come on, you're being too much. It's over the top. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
you're teasing a bit too much. Back off, instead of filling out all kinds of forms and bringing administration in on it.
right, right, absolutely, yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway, okay, so but somewhere, let's see, the first so when you had a couple of mentors, though, that popped up by the grace of God. uh I don't know the order of it.
Mhm.
Was it Mr. Edwards, or was it your in football?
Yeah, so I would say the first person who kind of came in and stepped into my I have a great mom and stuff like that. So there's different things like that. But
Right, right.
I went out for high school football. Terrible athlete. I always joke to say the only position I ever played in high school football was like left out. I was terrible, you know.
Really?
Yeah, oh man, I'm
Yeah.
not an athlete, you know. And so just because you're big and maybe have some kind of strength, I do want to say this too, working with professional athletes for almost 30 years too, is that this weight room strength does not equal athletic ability. So
Right.
for
Oh,
everybody who
yeah.
goes in there and sees an NFL player and you go like, he's benching 225. I thought he benched 500 pounds. It doesn't make a difference what you do in the weight room. I know a lot of guys who did not have great careers in the NFL who weren't that strong in the weight room. I mean, who
Right.
were really strong in the weight room. You know what
Really
I'm
strong.
saying? So I just want to say that real quick. And so
Oh,
but
yeah.
yeah, so I went out for this sport, and there was this guy on our team. He was like a man. He was a year ahead of me. And you know how in football in high school you go to school, you start practicing before school starts. You have those
Oh,
things
yeah.
called like Hell Week and all these different things. So
Okay, yeah.
I've never been a part of that. So I went and did all that stuff. And I never played any kind of organized football before. And so he's like, stand here, do this, stand here, do this. And I couldn't figure out the playbook. It was too complicated for me. Like I couldn't figure out the X and the O's, everything would move. So I didn't know I was doing everything wrong. So he would kind of help me out with that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we go to the first day of school. You're in high school, and back then, not like today. Now they have multiple lunches. They might have break everything up, but back then everybody had the same lunch. And I walk into the lunch area and it's packed with the whole school in there, and I don't know where to go. And he goes, "Hey, John, sit next to me."
Oh, wow.
And that was Craig Anderson's his name. And Craig, he went on to play at the University of Colorado. He was a starting right guard for them for 3 years. They won a national championship, and that it was done that time frame.
Oh, with,
Time frame.
McCartney was the coach
Yeah,
back
Coach
then?
McCartney
Yeah.
recruited him. Right, right.
Oh, cool.
And
Yeah.
so, and then Craig went on, and he was a Secret Service agent, and then he just retired as a police officer in Sunnyvale, California, where he was a captain there. So,
Oh,
but
wow.
I was just with him this week in Florida. But yeah, so Craig's still my best friend to this day.
Oh,
All these
man.
years later, he's always watched out for me. So that was one. Number two was Mr. Edwards. That first day of school, I couldn't find my class. The bell rings. I'm late for class. This is before lunch even started.
This was high school?
This high school,
High school,
and
okay.
I'm standing there, and I don't know where to go. And it's the same day Craig said to come sit next to me. But it was early. It's before school started. The
Oh,
bell
wow.
rings. I can't find my first class, and he goes, "Hey, let me help you out." And he didn't just help me find my class, but Mr. Edwards is the man who taught me really how to read. He worked on my
Oh,
speech, helped with organize my homework every day after school. I would go to him, he organized my homework. And in my junior year in high school, he left though. He became a principal up in Oregon. He never saw me graduate or go to university.
what class did he teach? What was his
He was a special ed teacher.
special ed? Okay,
And I
cool.
did not know that. And he did not know I was his student. But he goes, "Oh, I see you. I have you in my class later today." And I didn't even know that was a special ed class until later on. My mom said something to me.
Oh, wow.
And so, because he just made me feel like it was a normal class, but he would sit down with me, he goes, "Let's figure this out." And such a nice man. And so he never
So
saw
that
me
was the
graduate.
same thing though, like the structure of it? So you had him, but then you're in other classes as well,
So
like
yeah, there was a one period a day
mainstream or
that
whatever?
was that class was dated to. So it felt like a normal class because it was a period. I go, "Oh, I got that class." I didn't notice there was only like 10 of us in there. But like he had different people throughout the day that would go into that class, and
Gotcha.
so everyone had different times throughout the day. So my
That's
freshman
cool.
year was in the afternoon, not knowing that, and then but he just made me feel super normal. But yeah,
So
but
many
we
teachers.
reconnected later in life when he came and heard me speak at an event,
Oh, man.
and it was in Oakland, and I jumped off the stage when I saw him in the back. He saw my picture on a poster and drove 10 hours just to be there. Yeah.
Awesome. Those moments, and I hate to say that that there's not that many teachers like that out there. I don't want to say that because Mr. Edwards could have been the best teacher for Jon Pritikin, right? And maybe he didn't have that effect on everybody else for whatever reason, connecting and everything else. But just being around schools, and I know it's a really tough job, but there's a lot of teachers that just kind of go through the motions, and but we need them to be like a Mr. Edwards. We need them to have that
Hmm.
passion. But the system, life, it's really really difficult to have that level of excuse me, passion every day to sow into one kid when you have a whole bunch of kids that you have to deal with. But okay, so
But
we got
that's every career. I want to say that too.
right.
Everybody at some point gets burnout, tired, frustrated, or whatever. And so, but like you've done school assemblies and you've spoken to a crowd. Let's say there's 1,000 students are you going to reach every student in that crowd? No.
No,
There's some people you're going to connect with more than other people will. You might be with another speaker, and that speaker might connect with that crowd more than you will, or a segment of that crowd, I should say. And that's like teaching, like everybody.
connection.
I do have this. I think after all these years of doing this, I have more grace and patience for teachers. I just don't have the grace and patience when a person in authority or education, whatever, parent yells at a student and screams at a student and belittles. I understand discipline, I understand correction, but when it becomes derogatory and puts down and screams, that's the part where I have an issue with.
Yeah, draw a line there. Yeah, it's tough. We've been in assembly. I always try to edify teachers as well as parents. That's always like my thing. I learned edification years ago. It wasn't something that came natural to me, but I'm always trying to build up for a kid. I want to be that third party voice for a family so that,
Mhm.
you know, kids and parents, stay connected. Parents don't become irrelevant. And if me doing some crazy things and telling stories can uh, better that relationship between parent and child, then I'm all in, and
Mhm.
so yeah, but the teachers, yeah, and we've had some fun teachers. Sometimes I'll bring teachers up on stage and stuff, and I get a little nervous. I do that feat, with the sledgehammer, busting a block on
Ah,
my stomach, laying
yeah.
across two chairs,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
you always wonder if they're really gonna, really gonna hit you hard, but it's fine. I can handle it. But they're yeah, it's a calling for sure, and hopefully the teachers can stay really zoned in as long as possible. Um, so okay, so all right, so now with football, is that when you started strength training?
Yeah, a little bit before that, my stepdad always worked out. He had like a little home
Okay.
gym. He was a strong guy. He went to University of Notre Dame. He is actually a rocket scientist. He's a super smart guy. But
Oh,
he had his Letterman's jacket from Notre Dame because he was one of the only guys. This is again like probably, let's see, he was born in 44, so this is like late 50s, early 60s, and he was benching over 400 pounds back then.
oh
And so
wow.
he was a strong man. And so still, I mean, he just turned 80. He still goes to the gym every day and works out, goes to a Gold's Gym in Southern California. And so,
Oh gosh.
anyways, I say all to say that he kind of got me into some of the weight training a little bit. And I was lifting throughout high school. And then I met a man who said, "Hey, let's meet at the gym at 6:30 every morning." And that really kind of got me going. And so, yeah, a businessman.
Before school?
Yeah, I used to lift. So junior year and high school year, I went before school every morning at 6:30, sometimes 6, and I would go work out before school. So to this day, I'm a morning workout guy. I love to work out in the mornings. It's my favorite.
So that continued, okay, past high school into college as well?
No, just in high school because I went on to a college. But there was a guy in my sophomore year in high school. There's a guy who came to my school who did the feats of strength. He ripped a phone book in half when they had phone books. He bent a steel bar, and he shared motivational stories. He didn't share his own personal one. He shared other stories.
Right, right.
And his name was Donnie Moore. And so he started doing the feats of strength in about 1980s when he started. So this would have been 89 now, 88 around that time period when I saw him. Maybe more like 88. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so then in college, in like when I was in my second year, well, 93, 94. I called him and he started mentoring me. He took me on the road and said, "Hey, this is what you do. This is how you speak to a school." He goes, "Kids are acting up." And he's just like, he goes, "You never attack the student. You attack the action. You don't attack the student." And he just taught me things, how to control a crowd,
Yeah.
how to stuff like that. And so he really mentored me later in life. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
The so okay, so John, what was your major in college?
So it was business. So it's like nothing I work with today. So I went to a small school in Santa Cruz, California.
Okay. And what about the speaking? Like at
Mhm.
what point did it go from, you know, not being able to speak, stuttering,
Right.
and to the point where, I mean, you talk awesome now. So, I mean,
Oh.
how did that whole thing, what was the timeline on that?
I have a face for radio, though. No, I'm joking. Yeah. um, the for me was as I was growing, some of my stuff was I can't say it. Developmental, and
Okay.
so as I developed, my speech got better. Things worked. As I stutter, I learned different secrets to stop stuttering and different things. Even
Mhm.
on stage to this day, drive-throughs are the worst for me. I still stutter in drive-throughs, but um, So like when I go through those things, I was able to work with that. But then later, I had surgery in my throat. I had like sleep apnea,
Okay, sure.
and so they took tonsils, adenoids, and skin from inside of my throat. They took it out, and
Yeah,
when the swelling went down, I said words I could never say in my entire life. I never grew up. I could never say the word piano my whole
really?
life. Yeah. And I was able to say piano after college. Successful, aluminum. I could never say those words.
Wow.
So I would say
And
tinfoil or whatever, you know.
and when was this? What
Oh,
this was?
so this is when I was 23. I had the surgery.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right.
Yeah.
Now was this now wait, there was something in there too where you I don't know when you started doing presentations, but
Yeah.
there
My
was
junior year in high school. I mean, excuse me, college. My third year in college, I started my nonprofit, Feel the Power. It was in 1994, and I started doing presentations. And I would never share my personal story. I shared other people's stuff. I showed like stuff like about Oprah or all these different motivational stories because I saw that's what I saw my friend do. And so one day, my mom showed me this article. She goes, "You should look at this article." It was in the magazine. It was about a lady who took her son to school, and the principal and the teacher pulled her out in the hall and said, "There's just no hope for your child." And this lady gets on the train going to the city, and she's crying. She says out loud in front of everybody, "There's got to be hope for my little boy." And I
uh,
looked at the bottom of the page and saw it was my mom who wrote it. And that's how I started to share my
uh,
story.
uh,
So that what happened was I read it, I go, "This is me." She goes, "Yeah." So I'm not a very good reader, so I memorized it. I was doing an event in Chowchilla, California. And Chowchilla was famous in I think the 70s when they captured a guy took a school bus of children and hid them. It was all
oh,
over the national news. This is like 70s or 80s or something like
they
that.
make a movie about that?
They did. They did make a movie
Yeah,
about that. Yeah.
yeah.
So
Okay.
I was doing an event there for 400 families. And so I came to that and I go, "Can I read you an article?" Which I had it memorized. And I read it. And I said, "And that boy's me. And that's my story." And they gave me a standing ovation. And I realized that day, people don't want to hear a story. They want to hear my story. They want to hear your story.
Yeah,
They want to hear about the person who's in front of them than about somebody else. So from that point on, I started sharing my story.
awesome.
Yeah.
Now wait, now what? When did the San Quentin come in? That because that like caught my attention.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
that before you started your regular
That
thing?
was no, yeah. So I was kind of doing that. That was kind of like high schoolish. I went to an event and I went on stage to share. I was sharing a little bit about my life, but not the detail I do today. But I was
Okay.
just sharing about life. I was invited to come and kind of be inspirational to these guys, and that guy stood up and we're like eye to eye. I was like 6'2" at the time, and we're on the stage, and he's out in the thing. I'm on the stage, he's out in the crowd. We're eye to eye, and he goes, "I can't hear you. Put the mic to your mouth." Because I held the mic down low, and
Uh,
yeah, I share my story. Do you know what's something I don't ever tell people very often? I'll tell you today. I just told this the other day to somebody, but at the end of that, someone said you did a really good job talking about your life, and I talked about struggles. Again, I didn't go into all the detail. They said that was really emotional. You know, I'm like young. I'm like, "Oh, thank you." He goes, "We had people watching on TV because it was death row." She goes, "We had a guy named Richard Ramirez, who was known as the Night Stalker, was watching. Another guy in death row named Robert Alton Harris, who was later killed. Who was a mass murderer." And a guy made me a little spider from his underwear, the elastic of his underwear. He made a spider to give to me, saying thank you, how I really touched his heart. And I said I didn't take it because I didn't want to touch it. But that guy is Charlie Manson. And I look
oh,
back and go, I
dude.
wish I would have kept that spider because I would have worth some money
Oh,
today. Yeah. So
man.
all three of those guys sent messages to the guards to say to me how my life touched their hearts.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I
That
didn't put that
kind
in
of
my book or any of that stuff,
right,
but
right, right. All right, wait, I
yeah,
gotta put a plug
yeah.
for my hometown. You mentioned Manson. The guy I looked up to as a kid was his name was Dave Draper,
Oh,
the
Dave Draper,
blonde
Santa
bomber.
Cruz. He's the one who taught me how to lift weights. Really.
You serious?
Yeah, Santa Cruz. He had a
Ah,
gym in Scotts Valley. It was a World's Gym. He had one in Santa Cruz. He still has to this day. And then the one in Scotts Valley where I went to go work, as it was by the place I worked out. And Dave goes, he goes, "Son, you're not doing this right. You got to do it like this." And he took me around. and he taught me how to. Then he would later in life he would come to my all my school assemblies when I was in the area, and we go out to eat. Dave was one of the kindest, most just I can't speak enough about him. And I remember one day he was in the gym. He was sitting there, and his arms are like this, like his hands and stuff like that. And I go, Jim, is that? I go, Dave, is that arthritis? Is that why it's like that? He goes, no, it's all those years of taking steroids. He goes, we put so much stuff in our bodies back then, it just messed us up. But one of the nicest men I ever. Yeah, when I blew up a hot water bottle, he said the first guy I ever saw do it was Franco Colombo. He would talk about that. Yeah,
That's every time
yeah,
I did one. Yes, but
yeah.
Dave was from my hometown, so yeah, we
Oh, I
could
didn't
go
know
up on
that.
story. Yeah, Secaucus, New Jersey, and Joe Weider had
Oh, yeah.
his business was in Union City, which was the next town over from our Secaucus, and Dave had a job with them. And when Weider went to California, Dave went with him, and yeah, so I had never met him as a kid. It was just like the stories about him as a kid were just amazing, and then at Old Time Strongman banquet, he got an award one year, and I
Mm.
finally met him and his wife Loree,
Yeah.
and it was great. But the connection was anyway. Going back to the Manson thing, right? So that was "Don't Make Waves," the movie. That was Sharon Tate's last movie.
Oh, that's right.
And Dave was Sharon's boyfriend,
Yeah.
husband in the movie, right, with
Yeah.
Tony
Yeah.
Curtis.
That's right. Yeah.
And then right after that, that's when
And the only reason I
she
know
got murdered.
that there was a picture of that on the wall. He had like beach blanket bingo. I think it was what it was called.
That was
Uh,
another one.
that
Yeah,
was
that was
another. I'm
another.
saying he had
Yeah,
all those movies on the wall that he was on. He
yeah,
was in
yeah.
because they
He was
call
in
him
the Beverly
the
Hillbillies,
blonde bombshell. I think it was his name.
the Blonde Bomber.
Yeah, blonde bomber.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and he
yeah.
wrote really well too. In fact, in the one book I wrote, I took one of his excerpts of a thing that he wrote, and I put it in the book. I told him I was doing it, but oh, so awesome. Well, that's a great connection. All right. So
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
learn from Dave, now you have a
Well, he
whole,
also,
you
he would
got
go
up
around
a
the
whole,
gym. He had a general manager named John, and anybody put their weights on the bench on the fabric, they got kicked out for the day. If you dropped your weights, you got kicked out for the day. It was a very nice gym, nice area, but if you didn't follow the rules, if you had to drop it or like yell and scream, he understand like pushing through a weight. He goes, but if it was over the top, he goes, I saw him yank people's membership for dropping the dumbbells.
that's probably the stories of him working out in some of these real dungeons and before he got his own gym. It's probably related to that. Some of these places, like they had, like 120-watt light bulb, and they're working out and like this sweaty place off the
Yeah,
beach, no air conditioning.
yeah,
Yeah, that was probably in response to that.
yeah, I'm
So
sure.
Dave had
Yeah, yeah,
order. Anyway, all
yeah,
right. Well, I'm glad I asked about that because
yeah, yeah.
that's
That's
pretty
small
cool.
world. Yeah.
Yes, sir. All right. So let's see. Where were we going with this? I wanted to know about. All right. So your strength training, your show is birthed. Now, you had your mentor doing the show. Did everything else kind of like fall into place, I guess, over time? Um, how you prepared, what you're going to say and everything else, or you had that revelation moment that hey, people, this story
Hmm.
is the story to tell. So was any research go into that, or were there any other influences that we should know about, or
Yeah,
it's
I think for me, it was like as time went on, you learn what works, what doesn't work. And then I'm willing to change my program depending on my audience.
okay.
And then I do so much international now, working with translators and stuff like that. You got to realize what's going to work or not going to work. Like I'm heading to Africa this week. So I'll be the DR Congo, and there's things I can't do here. I can't do there. I do here, because it's
Right.
Americans rely a lot on sarcasm and stuff like that for funny. So sometimes I don't always use a lot of humor on the international side because humor doesn't always
Right.
translate. Some
Right.
things
Right.
do, but some things
Yeah.
don't. And so, yeah, over time, we just kind of figure out what works, what doesn't work. I have noticed this, especially since the whole COVID situation, that my program's shorter and tighter now because the attention spans is not what it used to be.
Is that
So
around the world, or is it?
around the world,
Wow.
yep, absolutely. I've noticed that big time.
Yeah.
So most people used to do like a 50-minute assembly on 5-0.
Yeah.
My assembly is like 35 minutes, 30 minutes for elementary, 35 for middle and high school, and
Wow.
and it's just for me, it's just my sweet spot. So
35
yeah,
minutes.
so there's things, and I used to do a lot more of the feats of strength in the program, like breaking stuff, and now sometimes I do 2 to 3, and that's it. I don't do more than
Yeah.
that, just because it. And then at the end of the program, the students, I don't want to say kids, but students don't talk to me about the frying pan. They talk to me about my story, the
Yeah.
majority of the time.
Yeah. And that's what, obviously that's what you want, right? The feats are there. And
Yeah,
that famous basketball coach, Jimmy Valvano, he was a great motivational speaker back in the day. University of South Carolina, I believe he was a coach, but he was a New York guy. But he always used to say,
Jimmy
there's only,
V, right?
yeah, Jimmy V.
Yeah,
And, they still have the foundation for the Cancer
yeah,
Foundation for him and everything, and, he always had all the different components, of a great talk, make people laugh, make them cry, and make them think. And usually you can't go wrong with a good talk. But I always thought about that, being introduced to the strength world. And it's kind of another layer, right, of just grabbing people's attention, because like you said, you only with them for a short period of time. And instead of having to kind of go and win them over per se, you get their attention pretty quickly when you're bending and breaking and tearing things.
yeah, yeah,
So that's pretty cool. So wait, now, did you do that ice break thing with your head?
yeah,
Tell the
yeah.
truth. You did.
Yeah, yeah. I've done a whole bunch over the years.
Did
So
you
the
do
guy,
bricks too, or
yeah,
no?
yeah, a
Oh,
lot. Yeah.
good.
So the scallop bricks, man, the scallop bricks they used to
Yeah.
break. And yeah, yeah. So my
My,
record's 20, 21 or 22 with my head.
ah,
And then the ice is 14 feet. No, yeah, 12 feet.
ah,
No, 1,200 pounds, 14 feet. That's what it is of ice. So the guy who really started doing all that, like for those different teams back in the day, there's like the power team, all those different ones.
right, right.
But the guy who first started doing that for them was a guy named Kevin Newton. Probably
Okay.
no one's ever heard of this guy, but he's the one who trained me how to do all that. Yeah.
What part of your head did you hit with?
You hit the top right here. The
Okay.
reason why you hit right here is that your brain floats in liquid. You don't
Okay.
want to go backwards and forwards because you can bruise the front and the back. You try to go up and down. So you're diving into it with your top of your head right there. I probably have done, I'm not even exaggerating when I say I probably have done close to 1,000 head breaks. Yeah.
God bless you.
I just did one last summer in the UK.
My
Yeah,
my
yeah.
wife keeps saying, we got to get bricks, because that was the first thing I ever did in my entire life was I
Yeah.
only did 9 bricks, but I had never done anything in my life like that. I was 39 years old. I was an old basketball player, keyword being old, and this guy just kind of talked me through it. In fact, Bill Henderson was the guy's name.
Mm.
He was a San Diego guy, and he was doing an event, a youth rally in New Jersey, and he had me do this thing, and I was like, but it was at a time in my life where it was perfect timing, because we had just come through losing a child a few years before in a car
Mm.
crash, and so we had gotten really into the parenting thing, and I mean at a way deeper level than I ever anticipated. And I had all this cool stuff that I had learned, and I wanted to get it out there. I wanted to, share it with
Right.
people, and but I was kind of like, well, who cares? Like, you're like a 39-year-old guy, like, who cares what you got to say? But then I saw the reaction of the audience, and I was like, hey, wait a minute, this could be an opener, open up something. And it went from there. And, obviously I'm a dentist after that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so, okay. All right. So today, okay. So you talked about teasing. So you talk to kids. Give us I don't want you to do your whole presentation, but okay, you're wrapping it up. You've made a difference, a distinction between bullying, teasing. Like, what do you say to the kids in terms of like uh, relating to each other? I mean, there's a message, right, for, hey kids, think about this, or is there something like that that you close with?
Yeah, I think throughout the whole program, you're always trying to say it because you just don't want to say it at the end. You want to kind of put your throughout the whole program. But my whole thing is called "Be a Hero." And heroes
Okay.
watch out for each other. They help out people who aren't as strong as they are. Help out people who are
Right.
going through a tough time. I said, and everybody needs a hero too at times to step into their lives. And so my whole thing is, I want a student to know, one, that they're special, two, to never ever give up. The tough times you face now aren't always going to be in your life. Not saying you're not going to ever go through tough times, but the fact is they don't last forever. I, I always say this for myself: don't look where you're at, look where you're going. It's like the boys in the backyard who dug a hole. They put a board across the hole and they're riding their bikes across, and everyone's falling off the board. One boy's sitting off the side, and they go, "Why don't you try?" He gets on the bike and rides right across, no problem. He goes, "How'd you do it?" He goes, "I wasn't looking where my bike was at. I was looking at the end of the board where I needed to go." And that's the thing. I still constantly, because there's times, I'll be honest, I've done all this stuff, accomplished different things. Do I still have tough days? Absolutely. Do I still have those days I need, like, for lack of better words, a mental health break? Yeah. But I always reach out and I always tell somebody what I'm going through. And I remind myself, don't give up. It's going to get better.
Right.
And that's the other thing I want students to know too. And I say is that everything I shared in the assembly today, I'll say, I didn't tell anybody. If I could have told somebody, they could have stepped in, they could have helped me out. You don't have to do life by yourself. There's people along the way who want to help you out. And for the person who's here today and feels like everything, they feel like they're a mistake, they feel like they're an accident, and you feel like giving up, we want you to know today, we'd rather have a broken you than not have you at all. Because the choices you make today are the realities we walk in tomorrow. But you need to know that when you give up on the gift of life, that is a permanent decision, as the saying goes, that's a permanent decision to temporary problems. The problems do get better.
Yeah.
And I just got an Instagram message from a boy saying, "Hey, I was in sixth grade. You came to my school. I had planned to kill myself that day, wrote my suicide note and everything." And I said, "I wanted to write you a note today just saying, hey, I'm graduating from high school tomorrow. And I'm going to say, you're the reason why I'm graduating because I didn't take my life." That just happened to me yesterday. Just got that message. And that's
Uh,
why we do all we do. It's like you just want people to know just the way you feel, it's not the way you're going to feel the rest of your life. Again,
yeah.
not saying you're not going to have tough times, but they don't last forever. Just don't give up. And then watch out for another person.
Yeah.
Be kind to each other. Watch out for it. Be careful how we talk. We have enough pain and struggles we go through in life. We don't need more. And so, you're not going to make a difference in everyone's life, but hopefully you make a difference. And lastly, I want to encourage teachers. I'm a product today of a school assembly, but also I am able to do what I do today and speak to all the kids and people around the world because one teacher, let me say this, one adult saw something in my life.
Yeah.
And we just want to encourage everybody today.
Yes, everybody.
And then I usually end with this saying, my daughter, who's traveled with me her whole life, she's 21 years old, but she's traveled with me. She's the youngest person ever in the history of American Airlines to be executive platinum at 1 years old. She has flown over 4 million miles. She's been with me all over the world, 50 something
My
different
God.
countries. And if she was staying here next to me, now every week as she was growing up, I took her on a date, her and we would go on a date every week of her life. But if she was staying here next to me, and this is what I say at the end of my assembly, especially the older students, she would tell you, me as a dad, I'm not the perfect father. I've made mistakes. Have I tried? Yeah, but I'm not the perfect father. I don't know what your relationship is like with your parents, but as a parent today, I want to tell you this. I'm proud of you. And to watch students all across the world start crying when you say that. That's what we need to know. People need to know that they're encouraged, they're not alone, and to never give up.
Yeah. Yep. It's that simple, but it's not simple.
Yeah, it's easy to say, it's hard to do. I said that too. It's
Yeah.
easy
Yeah.
to stand on the stage and tell you not to give up. It's hard to walk it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, do you talk directly to parents ever, or is it mostly you're talking directly to the students themselves?
The majority of students, yeah, but some districts have me come and do parent nights and stuff like that. It's so hard nowadays with all that, with the parent stuff. Just because sports is so big now with all the,
Mhm.
but I have done a lot, and they've always been well attended. Yeah,
Yeah. They,
the,
that was always the challenge, that we started doing the parents a few years into it, and reluctantly, because what am I going to tell parents? I was, a young parent myself. My kids were young. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to tell you, but this is what I'm following, basically. And I was honest, but we were able to get pretty good turnouts. But then it's always like, The feeling was you're kind of like preaching to the choir at that point, because the parents that actually do show up are the parents that really do care, and the ones that should be there are the ones that don't show up. But yeah,
Yeah.
that whole dynamic is tough. But anyway, all right. So let's. I just want to hold this up because this is Jon's book, Feel the Power, and this book is super powerful, and I want to encourage grandparents and parents as a resource to get this book to understand what Jon went through and what he took away from it. Because in our conversation here, we just kind of we put a little dent in it, but there's so much more to it in day-to-day life, and how you can use that book to encourage your kids, your grandkids. So yeah, I want to do that. Is there anything else I wanted?
Can I say one other thing too about that?
Yeah, for sure.
And that is that we have an app. It's called on the front of that book. It says "A Survivor's Guide to Happiness,"
Right.
and so we have an app called "A Survivor's Guide" that goes with the book. Now it's
Okay.
for sixth grade and above. It's totally free. It's both Android and Apple. Every day on the phone at 12 o'clock, there's a little inspirational saying that pops up on your phone. There's information from me and also a psychologist that we worked with. I'm not a good reader. So everything on there is there's also we work with Audible, and we have a little sections being is read by me and by the psychologist if you want to hear it.
Right,
There's
right.
even white and brown noises and different things to listen to help you calm down. And there's action steps what to do. They can click on it if they want to see if they're going through a tough time. There's different subjects matters, and then there's also a way to connect with different like suicide prevention hotlines and all that. And it's in the Google Play and also Apple Store. It's called a Survivor's Guide.
Awesome. Awesome. Jon, I want to pause one more second. Okay. And yeah, so is there anything else you want to tell the parents, Jon?
Yeah, I alluded to it earlier about my mom. You know, she's always been there for me or encouraged me and stuff like that. And for every parent who is listening or watching at this podcast today, I just want to say this to you. You've heard about me being able to speak to all these countries and all these different people, 10 million in person, over 200 million online. I just want to say this. If I can make it, you can make it. Your child can make it. I don't care if they have a learning disability, a speech impediment, ADD, ADHD, or even autism. I want every mom and dad to know today there's hope today. Don't ever give up on the student. We appreciate you. Thank you for all your hard work. But want you to know there's hope today.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time with us. I was going to ask about your mullet, but I'm going to leave that for next conversation.
It's been
And
gone for quite a while.
yeah, I was going to compare, but really appreciate you, man.
No, thank you.
So that's a wrap. I hope everyone enjoyed today's episode and you got some takeaways that you can use immediately in your life. I'm sure you can. Please share this with your friends, and don't forget to see Jon's stuff at feelthepower.org. You can find his app there. Get his book. It's on Amazon. It's awesome. Feel the Power. And don't forget all my stuff at topsecretsofsuccess.com and russelljonespeaks.com. If you're a parent or grandparent or mentor to a 10 to 13-year-old, check out our 60-day transformational interactive video series, Top Secrets of Success for Kids and Parents. It's amazing. It will equip and encourage parents and kids. Yes, at topsecretsofsuccess.com. Get on our email list. And in the words of the inimitable Hulk Hogan, say your prayers, take your vitamins, and you'll never go wrong. Then you can all go and make it a great day. Bye for now. Let me